Um, so my name is Travis Beardsley, and thus far, my thesis I've been working on, yeah, it's kind of chilly in here too, sorry about that. I like it to a nice spot right next to the vent. But I've been working on creating subversions of technology by using costumes, and it's kind of like a big subject that I've been trying to tackle. But the way I started this out was trying to find um, the areas in which I could create this subversion. And the main points that I ended up picking up were ideas of surveillance, instantaneous upload, and filtering systems. So it's with these three main categories, it's me trying to examine these kind of ways that, especially commercial technology and the commercial technology that we even use today, have kind of influenced the way that we have a relationship with our body and the way that we kind of have a relationship with the others around us in social areas, whether that be in physical social areas and also like virtual areas. Um, so kind of bouncing off of that idea, working with my pre-thesis, doing stuff that are involved with ideas such as mourning, but then also working with ideas, surrounded around ideas of kind of like social gatherings and social interactions and how we respond to those. So I guess I'll first go into the work that I started with. This right here is, and these are kind of like all like these loose prototypes that I wanted to design just to kind of get ideas out there. This costume, this first one, you see it on, sorry, you're fine, on the video that's looping on the laptop. But this was kind of going into this idea of instantaneous upload, this idea that as we've kind of like gone through society and as we've begun to extend our bodies through forms like Facebook and Twitter, and this idea of being able to upload something, plug in a chip to my shoe and have it be uploaded to my iPhone, this idea of all this data traveling, I thought it'd be interesting to create this kind of costume that once worn over someone's head, it kind of like prevented this escape of data from someone's body. So it's me like projecting this future where as we walk around in the public space, in the public sphere, there's sensors around that are able to detect how we feel, whether that's our body temperature, our heart rate, our blood pressure, and upload this to this kind of like information ecosystem that just continues to grow and build. It's this idea of maybe our like brains can't hold all the information we want it to, so we create this like augmented memory where it's always storing for us. It's storing what we see, it's storing what we feel, what we hear, and kind of going off of that. So this costume is then a roadblock to that. It was me kind of saying that I didn't want this. I wanted this kind of like freedom, this kind of like cut from this kind of like this flowing system. So I made this hood-like device that is worn. That is kind of like this like prop. And then
I'm going to stop you. I'm going to play the flow.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, so is this device designed to prevent information from escaping from you, or is it designed to monitor?
It's to stop.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question.
So it's supposed to make you incognito.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea for me was to kind of create this moment of autonomy to the person who's wearing it. This idea that they're no longer connected to the system for a split period of time or forever the time period that they continue wearing this.
So does it operate technologically, or does it operate psychically?
Well, I mean, the way that I am presenting it, it operates like that technically. I'm saying, like, for me, it's this idea that it's a technical device that, once worn, will prevent that from being transferred. Although that, right there, the physical object itself isn't technically up to that type of, like, process. It's proposing this kind of, like, prop for that, for it to exist as a technical wearable device.
Okay. So this is a prototype that asks for the invention of an actual functional one?
Yeah, correct. So then, instantaneous, that piece, I decided to call it instantaneous upload overload. So the hood-like device function as the upload, and then kind of as a combatant to that, I was going into these ideas of how these costumes can function as possible choice, and how they can have kind of like the inverse reverse of it. So it'd be like this instantaneous upload is a person hiding, a person subverting themselves and kind of hiding away from technology. Where I wanted to create a type of device that would then reverse that rule and overload technology in the means it has. So I created this backpack that would be the overload part. It was this idea of, and I was really interested by like what had happened during like emergency situations where there was phone clogs, or just something as simple as even like bandwidth backup within internets, where the technology that we use, the technology that we literally depend on, becomes useless to us. So there's an emergency, I'm unavailable to get a hold of other people that need to be reached, whether it's the police station or someone else. So this bag was made to function as that, to be this device that once activated would overload the kind of like technology, the technological systems within an area, almost acting as if it's an information bomb, and kind of repurposing the idea of what could be held in, and how such a simple device as a backpack could function as that.
So this would broadcast something.
Yeah, almost blowing it out. And then moving on from that, I went into ideas of surveillance. This was an outfit that I sewed together that has a wire framing inside of it. The main purpose for that was I talked about how as viewers or as users, as people move through this like future world that I'm creating, cameras and technological systems are able to recognize you by your human movement. That can be seen with like contemporary cameras that are able to track individuals as they move throughout corridors or different spaces. And so my idea was to fabricate these type of clothes that had this type of like mesh wiring embedded inside of them, so as one was to move, they would still be able to function and create movement, but it would be slightly altered as a way of not allowing a computer to recognize you. So that was created with Asher right there, and kind of experimented and moved around. And then the materials on the table, the last two there are kind of ideas of what I wanted to work with as far as final products for this type of outfit that I'm making. And as I continue working, it's taking on more of like a bodysuit-esque device. And then the inverse of hiding from cameras was taken on this idea of a prison-like system. I feel like I always thought of this word. Panopticon prison, where it's all these eyes are being watched on you. And usually, I guess, when I've done a lot of work with Panopticon, kind of looked into it, it's this idea of the individual, but I wanted to turn that then into this idea of the technology that's looking on you. And so this future suit that I'm kind of constructing would then have this added on extra layer that, I mean, once worn, it's kind of like this like dazzlement. It's this idea that once this piece is activated, it's all cameras go on to the individual who's wearing it. It's kind of like inverse camouflage to me, and taking away the eyes from all other individuals within this space and having them only focus on one person. And that's the main kind of like deal with that one. And then my third and last one. Wait, do you have a question? Okay. My third and last one is filtering system. So the same way that we've kind of come to understand this idea that our thumbprint, a retina scan, or facial recognition is this kind of like individual characteristic that we all inherently have. In the future, a simple device as a sensor will be able to tell who you are. And for me, that it became a lot more about accessibility and privilege to information within the future, and how we could something as simple as an individual's identity could prevent them from learning something or some type of knowledge or any type of data that could be prevented just by who they are. So, yeah, and just the idea of, I mean, the big one was context-aware differential permissioning, where, I mean, that's completely just like hiding information all in general from an individual. So the idea was to create a costume that, once worn, it strips you of your identity. It makes it so these types of leaders, these type of data analysis systems that are floating around aren't able to see who you are, and it becomes this like open source of access to the information that's at hand. It's I guess it would be like the same thing as clearing your parental guidance page on your Firefox. You can view whatever you want to view. That would just be embedded within.
I'm very literal minded. Can you describe that in a physical rather than a conceptual way? Like what is it?
What is like the idea of like hiding information?
No, what physically is this costume? It conceals your identity?
Yeah. I mean, I think.
What makes it different from other costumes? Because costumes often conceal your identity. What physically does it look like?
I mean, I think for me physically it would, just have like implements of some type of, I mean, that kind of goes into this conversation of like, material where it's like this idea that there's this kind of like, naturalistic, just something as simple as like a cloth or material, but then there's this kind of like embedded part of this, this like dazzlement, this like, I mean, this added on essence of some type of, I don't want to say like technological, but this idea that, there's kind of this mixture of coming together of these natural and these, very like man-made, like materialized forms. And so far the idea for that final suit is taking on the form of more of like, cloak-like outfit, type of like draping.
So it's like a cloak or a drape.
Yeah.
That conceals you completely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Like the Harry Potter invisibility display.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the materials that you're using and how it's connected to it's really not functional.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's kind of in this, almost like a game of pretend.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm going to put this on and this makes me invisible.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this and it makes it so my Facebook and Twitter statuses don't get updated.
Yeah.
But the materials that you're using have what seem like a little more like this feminine quality. Is there some sort of I mean, all the materials that I'm seeing are kind of like they seem as if they are like they belong to like a certain gender.
Yeah.
Is there? I guess I want like some information.
Well, I haven't necessarily been looking at my materials as far as, like gender-wise goes, but I've been interested in like pairing them together as like I was kind of saying this idea of mixing something that's, much more like natural and handmade, such as like the lace and the crocheting, like using yarn and using these kind of like really like soft, like I guess almost feminine materials, but these just like kind of more like naturalistic looking, and feeling fabrics, and then kind of meshing them together with these almost like very like industrious, very like man-made material that, kind of like playing with those, and it's been this like kind of game of juggling this idea of like, okay, this organic, this non-organic, this like natural, this digital, and trying to find a way to mix those together within like the products that I'm making. It's the idea of like using this like really like harsh and even like potentially like dangerous like mesh within something that's like soft as like a t-shirt, like cotton and it's like soft padding, and kind of like finding like that line, like where those two like lie together.
I'm a little confused. Is lace the natural material or the man-made material?
I wouldn't really say it's natural. I'd say it's a much more of like a softer.
So it's the juxtaposition of
Yeah.
soft and hard?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that it's like any more information on the material. Like you're reacting to something that is very structured, very rigid. Like they're almost like once you enter into the program of Facebook, Twitter, discovers that there's a certain order to it, and by incorporating and then like that sort of rigidity, oftentimes people put in like this masculine sort of notion that's like these things that even though we may not believe it as people that are like in the creative community, we still have that same association. And to combat that with like these softer materials like crochet, and then also like these sort of like sequins, and that I mean like it's definitely there's a commentary there that I don't feel is being discussed, and maybe it's not intentional, but by incorporating those materials you can't help but ask those questions.
Okay.
So that you're saying that instead of the materials being, it's your choice of how, if you're interested in a juxtaposition that's putting two things together that are very different, you suggested code words of soft things and hard things, comforting things and dangerous things. One that I'm sensing, but you didn't say, might be old-fashioned and brand new, like the lace. Where's the bag?
Oh, right up there.
The lace has old-fashioned associations, but for instance, if old-fashioned and high-tech are your juxtapositions, I might suggest, for instance, that the lace not be blue and polyester, that the lace be cotton and off-white, because that's what older lace really was. So it doesn't read. What I think Gabe's saying is what it reads as is butch and femme,
Yeah.
because it's bright blue polyester lace. If it were off-white cotton lace, and it were a logo for a technology company, it might read as old and new. If it were a very, very, very soft material, for instance, fur is a very soft material, which might or might not have a masculine or a feminine coding, depending on how you used it. But if it were fur and glass, that wouldn't code male-female, but it would code soft-hard.
Yeah.
So being clear about what your juxtaposition terms are, what are you really most interested in juxtaposing? Is it butch and femme? Is it old and new? Is it low-tech and high-tech? Is it soft and hard? It's your choice, but to make it in a way that's clear and consistent throughout the materials.
And then how are we achieving the information? Like, are you showing this through your video that you have on display? Like how it works? Are you thinking of just having them hung or just displayed?
I'm thinking of having them wore, like them actually being worn on individuals, and then also kind of me taking on the like ringleader role of kind of like the performative aspect of explaining them and telling the story of this kind of like future world and where these function at. Because I know that there's a lot of like technology, and there's especially a lot of like technological terms embedded within each piece of clothing that one could easily miss. And so the idea of me like taking on this like performative aspect and really like explaining to like what these are and proposing this like kind of like future world that these exist in, that these are meant for, was kind of like my main idea of being able to have it come across. And I mean, without me there, I'd want things like the videos and them to exist on like mannequin human-like forms, and hopefully have like props around them that exist as these like reminders of like, oh, this is like for something that is involving data coming from out of my body. Or this is about cameras watching me and tracking me as I walk down the street.
Most of these objects carry their meanings in no way. I would have no idea what this is from the object itself.
Yeah.
If you asked me what it did, I would say, if you told me it was a costume, which I might be able to figure out from the hood and the fact that it has sleeves. If you asked me what it did, I would say it would make the wearer very, very obvious. Because it's bright red and bright white. You've told me that it's a device that hides people.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist in this.
Okay.
It's a story you've told me. It's a very interesting story. This can be a great costume for a futuristic fashion show or performance, so that if there's a narrator who's telling us this, or it's acted out on the stage, I would buy it if it were well sold to me as a performance.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of the old Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers serials, where they've got little cardboard wings, but we're shown them flying through interplanetary space. And we believe it because of the suspension of disbelief. But if just a little pair of cardboard wings appeared on a mannequin, I would have no way to know that I was intended to believe that they belonged to someone who used them to fly, because it's not physically present in the object.
Yeah.
So right now what you're talking about is a performance, for which these are the costumes.
Yeah.
But as they are, they don't stand alone.
Yeah.
The two things that stand alone a little bit, the fabric, which is sparkly, does cause people's attention to come to it. So if I were describing that, I might say it's the thing that reflects light, or it's the thing that people would look at. This object, I can tell it's some kind of armor, and if you wore it, it might make your movements a little more smooth. Those are the only information of what you've told me that's contained in the objects themselves.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you say more about your choices to make such a divergence between the objects and the information? So that, for instance, a thing whose purpose is to hide people is bright, bright red.
I think the reason behind that is maybe just like the language that we're using for the idea of like hiding. Like when I say hiding, I don't mean someone like physically hiding like within an environment. I mean someone's like virtual digital information that's like floating around them as far as like hiding goes. I mean, it's this idea that our information and kind of like our identity like kind of make us who we are as we go through a certain space. And although that's like bright red, the main idea isn't to make us hide within our physical spaces, to hide within a virtual space.
So you're dealing with you're struggling with a really difficult issue for a visual artist, which is how do I physicalize visually a thing which is invisible? Okay.
Which is a fun thing of working with technology.
I'm curious about the performance side that happens with these ideas of Omnicom, and how it's not really necessary that anybody is really in the tower seeing us. That we just assume that there's somebody there in the tower seeing us.
Yeah.
And so like these can be in that same sort of sense. We're hiding, but nobody's really looking for us.
Yeah.
We just assume that somebody wants to be a part of us. And I guess I'm curious about how in sort of like this sort of technological systems, how we assume importance. Because if we're hiding from something, that means that somebody's trying to find us.
Yeah.
Or if we have this assumed, I guess an assumed importance when we're thinking about like resisting.
Computer's watching us.
Yeah.
That's me, I think, playing with the idea of just giving the technological devices that we like have and that we associate with, giving them like some sort of agency. And it's this idea that something as simple as like, oh, my laptop comes built in with a webcam in it. Like, when is it on? When is it not on? Like, if I'm looking at it, is it looking back at me? Or it's this idea that like you see the blue, or you see like the red light blinking, you see it on. Like, but is it watching me? And where's it going to? Or like, what's happening to that? And I understand like the idea of that it's like this important, like that it takes on this idea of like importance. But I'm also just interested in the idea that this data, these visuals, this information is going somewhere, but we kind of don't necessarily know exactly where. And kind of just like playing with that idea of where this stuff could be existing at, and who's accessing it, and kind of like leaving that open for the audience and the people who are coming to see it to kind of like question and figure it out. Because
I guess why are we afraid of that? Or why? Because I mean, if you're resisting it, then I guess I'm curious about the emotion that's attached to it. To like resist or to hide or to cloak or to try to disarm. Like I'm curious about like the resistance side is really embedded, like that emotion that's attached to it.
I'm interested in it just because to me it's like this idea of, and in this process it's this idea of reclaiming like our body and reclaiming our individuality in relationship to our body, kind of re-examining our own human form, I guess.
There's something in this that's backwards. You talked about reclaiming our bodies, and I'm staring at this piece of armor. My eyes are looking at this piece of armor where you're saying that, and I'm thinking, well, what that thing does is make it so you can't move your body, and you can't feel your body, and you can't do anything with your body, and nobody can see your body, and nobody can touch your body. And that's an interesting juxtaposition.
Yeah.
How is that reclaiming our bodies?
For me, like the best answer I can give for that is this idea that the performance artist Stellark does, and he always talks about this idea that as we extend our body and as we create these like apparatuses that exist on our body, it also at the same time like kind of like inverts that and shows us then this like focus of this like lack of like what we have in our body, this what is possibly missing. And so like creating these outfits that kind of like hold on to this like ridiculous idea of hiding, but then also pinpointing like how that would make it so your body is unable to move freely as a human form. I feel like that would then be kind of like put into like this magnification of what that natural body or what that natural being is.
So that when you take it off, you become more aware of the body.
Yeah.
Okay. So is what you're proposing the idea that in putting on a costume, because all of these objects are outrageous, so that in putting on a costume, particularly a costume that's outrageous, we reclaim for ourselves a private identity which is separate from the public identity. That the mask and the buffoon and the armor and the character on the stage is not ourselves, and therefore we are enabled to have a private self even in a society in which privacy has been compromised.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So these are costumes that are designed to be as outrageous as possible so that the person who's wearing them has some privacy because what's being seen is the costume rather than the person itself. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is technology really central to that?
No, I think that this kind of act of reclaiming the body has historically been done, I mean, hundreds of times beforehand. It's just that technology has become kind of like the platform that I've been like educated in as being like a 21st century um, person, and that kind of like absorbs this, but then also like as like I've like grown up, I've been able to like see that separation like happen a lot more. Like in my like real world, having something as simply as like glasses since I was 2 years old, I feel like I have like this relationship to these like early ideas of then like what it means to be like a cyborg, or like what that means to um, uh, attempt to like extend like the human body, not past the idea of like creating like a condition where we're back to this human state, but then kind of like taking it past this like industrial age to like this information age where it's about just completely extending the body. Like how far can we like expand
So
ourselves
you're
out?
interested in costume as modifications of the human form, including glasses, including hearing aids, including potentially cameras, microphones, that these all are forms of costume?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, do any of the costumes that you're building incorporate technology?
Like hypothetically, as like props they do. Literally they won't.
behind your choice not to do that? Well, I'm interested in the fact that you identified eyeglasses as a piece of technological costume which extends the body. And that makes me think, because all of these have this sort of low-tech look, certainly if you're engaging with these questions of technology as costume, I would be keyed in as a viewer to what you're talking about. Because my biggest trouble is I don't know what you're talking about from these objects. I think what you're talking about is really interesting. But if these objects incorporated things that modified the senses, that modified the reach, which might be as low tech as the materials, these sort of Goodwill materials. You know, Goodwill also sells eyeglasses and also sells hearing aids. There are also kids' toys that modify your voice or that amplify your hearing. There are this kind of aesthetics equivalents of technology. And if they were not present in a project that was about technology as costume and costume as technology, I would expect the artist to have a conscious decision about why that would be visible in some ways in your work.
Well, and I think my decision not to include as heavily include technology within the outfits themselves is because there's still like this there's like still this like platform that I like playing with on this like balance beam of trying to find exactly how much technology I want to embed into a costume that is purposed to subvert technology, and trying to find like that bouncing point. And I feel like that if there's this like physical hardware, this physical like embedded nature of technology within this clothing that pushing it too far to the side. So the idea of technology for me is like using these separate devices outside of the costumes that'll be like within this like final performance. Things such as using like video and using possibly like interactive elements within a final performance, but not having them be embedded in the actual like wear that.
Because this is supposed to shelter you from that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it seems to me that to follow your concept through, you've got to make a very conscious decision about what counts as technology and what doesn't count as technology for the purposes of this project. For instance, almost all of this is synthetic fabrics. Is that technology? There's mesh in here. Is that technology? If you don't want there to be eyeglasses because eyeglasses are technology, as a viewer, I don't make the natural. There isn't a natural breakpoint for me that polyester and mesh aren't technology and eyeglasses are. So it's drawing for yourself the line between what is it that you're giving people the chance to shelter from, and what is it that the shelter is made out of. What's the tech and what isn't, or what are the two different kinds of technology. You've got your concept says there is a thing that's impinging on us, which is made, and there is made stuff that we can use to defend ourselves from that, to defend our privacy. So you have to give for the viewer a difference we can see, hear, smell, taste, touch with our senses between what is the stuff that's impinging on us and what is the stuff that we're using to defend ourselves. And either that can be different stuff, they're two different kinds of technology, and then you have to identify what the defining features are so that maybe this is not advice, this is an example. All of the technology we use to defend ourselves is brightly colored, and all of the technology that impinges on us is black and white. All of the technology that we use to defend ourselves is made out of animal parts, and all of the technology that's impinging on us is made out of plastic. Either some distinction like that, or something about the way they're used that's visually consistent, so that the stuff that is impinging on us may be made out of the same stuff as what we're using to defend against it, but it operates differently. It moves or is shaped or it's used differently in a way that the viewer can perceive with our senses. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I would like to know more about the other identity-based ideologies that are attached to the materials. You have like not only gender, but there's also an ageist associated with it, and then you also have sort of a socioeconomic status that's attached to it because of the quality of the materials. The age, I mean, it seems like these are older folks.
Uh-huh.
I mean, just like, and that's what I'm reading it as. I'm reading it as like probably a gal that's like in her like 60s, and she might have grandkids.
Yeah.
She's making this for her grandkids because she's concerned about Facebook and Twitter. And she maybe lives in an apartment complex for people that are on a budget. I mean, to me, that's how this reads. And I think just being aware of like the materials and like what the material really is saying to me. I mean, like I think my mom at one point had this had this material, and I think she put it over like a white tablecloth because of the classic or whatever it might be. Like the assumptions that we're putting onto this, as opposed to something like Apple, the slickness of Apple, just like super shiny, just well crafted, like sharp lines, and then looking at these, and it's like, whose artifacts are these? Who is this person? Who would really wear this in compared to like the people that are using it?
It's that juxtaposition.
Yeah.
It's visually defining your terms. What are you juxtaposing with what? What's opposing what? How do you function distinctive? And it always has a cultural load. Like choosing to finish or not to finish a scene.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it always has associations. So make them clear and consistent. Will follow you anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Have you looked at Buffon? At the history of costumes, the costumes that are designed to conceal people's identities so that they can clown, so that they can make social and political commentary. Okay. Buffon, Buffoon is the other. There's a long, long, long history of people mostly without a lot of money, from classes that are mostly disenfranchised, that are making resistance or subversion or commentary on the larger social forces they feel victimized by. And they dress up in outrageous costumes that serve to conceal their identity because they're wearing big masks, or they're dressed in drag, or they've got big padding on their butts, or whatever. So they're not identifiable, and these characters then can take the actions that are forbidden and make the comments that are forbidden.
It just reminds me of like drag cults and stuff like that. It's like this. To me, like that's not like this entire like hidden identity, but it's like this idea that what someone wears or what someone like puts on their bodies is this change of identity, whether like they're part of that in this like real world like social economic status or not. Like it's disregarded. It's like once that outfit is put on that take on that role of whether it's the business executive or like the top trophy wife or something.
But there are bodies of costume, and this is what these things remind me of, whose purpose is to be outrageous. They're beyond the range of what's usually, it's the difference between dress and costume. Beyond the range of what people usually wear in the street. And the outrageousness of the shape, of the color, of the modifications to the body that they make when they're wearing, conceal the wearer's identity. Not just their social identity, but their personal identity. And part of the reason for that was in people's ethics that were really unpopular, you could get killed. So you wanted to wear something that people couldn't tell who you were. They were protections for privacy as well as signifiers of social equality. And you'll see that in Feast of Fools, and you'll see that in buffoons, and in some kinds of clowning. But if you are, you've only got 6 months, but if you have not yet made choices about how to structure a particular piece of costume, and you need more information or inspiration about how to shape a piece of costume which is not designed to mimic the structures of the body, that's one of the kinds of things that you can look at. It's part of a long tradition which are about garments whose shapes
Slate, or are you going to just primarily focus on the performance and the video of that? Or are you going to kind of display them?
I think for the kind of like the main show of them, I'd want them to be displayed as, I mean, to be like these worn objects within this type of like performance. But afterwards, they'll exist as these kind of like these still objects.
So people couldn't try them on if they wanted. They'd be on the wall.
Will there be any kind of information to guide people as to what they are?
Yeah, definitely.
How will that be?
I mean, that's just, I guess that I haven't necessarily decided that out exactly, but it would be, I mean, it's like having these discussions with you guys where it's like trying to figure out what exactly this piece of clothing, this piece of costume is able to communicate, and what type of elements I can put around it, or what type of context can I put it in, that, that someone like my mom would be able to walk up and go, I get it, or someone off the street, without this like technological understanding of this, I have this like paranoid futuristic mind that I like live in sometimes, would be able to like connect with it.
Well, it's just you got a meta narrative. You got a big narrative that's vital to this piece of work. Most of it is not contained in any way in the objects, so you need some way to convey the narrative for the people who aren't there for the performance, or you only use them as part of the performance, which is equally valid. But if your piece's effectiveness depends on the presence of this narrative that isn't contained in the objects themselves, then you've got to have a way to get that narrative to the people who come to encounter the objects 100% of the time, or they're just not going to get it. They're going to get the associations, what Greg was saying, the associations. This might be something that my grandma somehow had because of the fabrics, or this might be, I bet I got this at I bet they got this at the bids. These kinds of cultural associations they're going to get. If you can get more clear about how you make and juxtapose those associations in space, then the objects will carry more of the narrative. The more of that you can do, the less you're going to need other media to carry the story, and vice versa. And either way, any way you do it can be okay, as long as you do it on purpose. You can decide these are only going to be used in a performance, and the whole show is going to be performative. But then you got to make your show work in a way that's 100% performative. You can decide there's going to be a video. You can decide that there's a book that's not available online, and you have to read the book. However you do it, as long as you make a decision, you carry it through, and you let us in. You got to have a way into this story, because it's a good story. It's a great story. But right now, I'm not getting it from here. I'm getting it from here.
Do you have any questions for us?
Can't think of any right now. You guys have any more questions?
Define the value of outrageousness. Say just right now, what is the value of outrageousness?
It's extremely important.
What makes outrageousness?
Well, it's like this, I mean, when I think of outrageous, I think of like this idea of like this extravagance, this thing that like is like capturing people's attention, and that attention is kind of, that attention is gathered for a reason. And for me, it's like these outrageous costumes are calling this eye to not only these costumes, but these issues and these scenarios that I'm kind of like building up around them. There's just like this idea of to be paid attention. It's a spectacle to me.
Okay. Panopticon proposes that being looked at is a bad thing. And part of your project is about that, the fear of being looked at.
Yeah.
What you just proposed is that we want to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
So you're dealing with attention
between the fear of being seen and the desire to be seen. The better you can articulate physically with objects in the world in a way that lets us in, so that when we walk in the room, we look at the thing and we go, oh, that's it. I'm afraid of being stared at, and I want to be seen, and I want to be fabulous. And I don't want to be stared at, I want to be fabulous. Because that's, in a lot of ways, that's a great conundrum of our moment, our historical moment. So, what you're proposing is that the idea of the panopticon is completely right, and it's completely wrong.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Well, and it's like, like especially with those two pieces kind of juxtaposing against each other, it became this idea of, for me, there was this really like humanistic idea of, oh, like we have choice. We have this idea of whether we want to hide, if we want to like go into this like dark world by ourselves and kind of like travel through it alone, or if we want to explore it and kind of like almost like just turn up the volume on it to the point where the machine just breaks down.
Okay, you've been leaving out a piece, and it's related to what Gabe said about not talking about the gender piece. Because I held this up and I said, why is it bright red if its purpose is to hide you? And you said quite brilliantly, because it's not supposed to hide you from people, it's supposed to hide you from technology. And I want to make the distinction that I'm not talking about hiding from people, I'm talking about hiding from the technology.
Yeah.
You didn't say the other part of it, which is that this object doesn't just not hide you from people, it makes you 10 times more visible to them. You made this out of the loudest, brightest red that you could find. If you tell us that you did it on purpose, if you show us that you did it on purpose because it matters, because it's about wanting to be seen by people, but not wanting X, and you have to fill in the blank for what X is. Explore that word technology a little more, okay? Because that's not fully articulated in your mind yet. But if you say it's about wanting to be seen by people but not X, then you're brilliant. Okay? If you say, well, I found it at the bins and it was $1.99, or if you say, well, I don't know, or if you say, well, it's not about hiding from people, then it looks like you didn't know what you're doing, and it's an accident.
Yeah.
So when you do it on purpose, let us know what the purpose is. This is loud for a reason. It's not loud by accident. Because if the viewer thinks it's loud by accident, they just think you don't know what you're doing, and